The FNRad Snowboard Podcast is presented by Vans.
Oh yeah, I want it to be absolutely not attractive to snowboarders.
Maybe we need an injection of that, because it'd be interesting.
And I didn't sign the contract, probably just had it in my bag for a couple of months.
And we're all like, oh, that's just banging, let her run.
We pushed each other to become better.
Front three-tailed it.
Season 5 of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast is sponsored by Wired Snowboards, the Boardroom Snowboard Shop, Anon Optics, Crow's Nest Barbershops, and Tribute Board Shop in Nelson, BC. Support for the show also comes from Cypress, Grouse, and Mount Seymour, Vancouver's 3 local mountains. The Boardroom Snowboard Shop is an independently owned shop with world-class service and selection. The Boardroom guarantees that you'll love everything you purchase and offers shipping to Canada and the United States. Go to boardroomshop.com for all your snowboarding needs. The Boardroom also sponsors events around the Vancouver snowboarding community like the Baked Salmon at Mount Seymour and Demo Days at Cypress Mountain. Visit a Boardroom location and tell them that Eric from FNRad sent you. This is Dave Hatchett's second interview on the FNRad Snowboard Podcast. I first interviewed him on the first season, and it was so much fun I couldn't wait to reconnect with him when I was down in Lake Tahoe. I rode Homewood with Dave on a day that scored an A on Dave's Resort Day rating scale. He lives with his family in Tahoe and is still close with his twin brother Mike, and still snowboards with the excitement of a teenager and the wisdom of a guru. This is one of my favorite interviews I've ever done, so please enjoy this interview with Dave Hatchett. How much at on the mountain?
They're saying 3 to 9.
Oof, on top of 5 to 14.
Mm-hmm.
Like that could be insane.
Next storm's going to miss us maybe. Next weekend could bring heavy rain and snow to Northern California. Just got to wait and see. Like tomorrow could be good. Sunday's probably going to be better. Sunday might look pretty good.
So the guy that showed me around today, the second guy, was a guy named Jason Mack.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and he was telling me, he pointed out the Hatchet. He's like,
yeah, nice.
He's like, they still call it the Hatchet. Because I told him I was coming, that you'd lent me the pass and that I was going to be interviewing you today.
Classic.
He's like, ask the guy what it's like to have a world-class run named after you.
That's classic.
It's probably the raddest inbounds run I've ever seen in my life. I think that's fair to say. Yeah. I haven't been all over, and I haven't been to Europe, and supposedly Europe's pretty sick, but I mean, when you take Mount Baker, which is, you know, the gem of the Pacific Northwest, there's nothing like the Fingers. I mean, there's Fly in the Wall and there's some cool shit there.
Yeah.
But it's short and steep and weird. Whereas that Hatchet run is, you got all that glory coming into it too. You just got like nice mellow turns coming in, so a lot of fun, and then you're just on top of it, and the whole chairlift is watching you.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a nice spine line for sure. It's cool. It's like you said, it's a bunch of pow turns.
You can pull that like that
right there.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool run. A lot of nice rad turns leading into a pretty sweet spine to finish it. And it rolls off steep.
So steep.
And you definitely got to kind of just point it because it's too steep to turn, really. So
yeah.
You get to a point where you just got to like let it run. And it'd be real easy to air the whole thing accidentally if you were going too fast.
Right. It's sick. So does somebody do it every year? Like, does it fill in every year that you could do it?
Yeah. That line was funny because it used to just kind of sit back in the day and not a lot of, people. I've watched the transition back in the day where hardly anyone would do the Fingers,
right?
Or a few people, down to now where there's just 20 people charging it within the first hour.
Yeah.
There's so many good snowboarders and skiers charging it. So obviously the experience level and the ability level of all the riders and skiers has gone way up. Yeah, and so there's a lot of good people it's way within their limits to ride that stuff.
Yeah, Corey Octoon told me that you got a 12-shot sequence on that, and that Sedway shot it from the parking lot or something.
Yeah, that was it was in Transworld for sure. I can't remember how many,
like 2-page spread or something.
It's funny, the story behind the Hatchet line is kind of funny because the funniest thing to me is it got ridden way before I rode it. I wasn't the first guy to ride it.
Right.
It peeped. I mean, the North Face guys, the North Face Extreme team, tons of people had done it. It's right under the chair. It's an obvious spine line. It's one of the the prettiest, most doable lines in the fingers, really.
Yeah.
It's one of the only lines where you really don't have to do like a big air to flat. So
Right.
So that's what it really appealed to me. I'm like, cool. I can actually just ride down that line and not have to like, buckle my knees into my face. And so that was one of the lines I really wanted to do. And basically what happened was it was Super Bowl Sunday, and it was in like mid-January, and then we were filming like maybe TB6 or 7, somewhere in that era. And I woke up at 5 a.m, charged a squad, got into the line at KT, and I was in line. I was on the first chair, and I was determined I'm going to go up on the first chair, and I'm going to ride down. I'm going to be the first guy down the fingers. Mike's going to film it. Sed's going to shoot stills, and I'm going to ride this line I've always wanted to ride. And the conditions were perfect. It was a Bluebird day. The snow, it was kind of a wet snow with a little bit of wind, and it had stuck perfectly to the fingers to the what was going to be the Hatchett line. I didn't know then. So I got to the top, and I charged down the face, made a bunch of sweet turns coming into it, and I did the kind of classic, like I did the kind of classic thing where I almost got kind of lost at the top, because as the fingers rolls off, there's all these knuckles, and you can't really tell which knuckles which. And I had lined up with a couple snow stakes that the ski patrol had put there, and I'm like, I think that's the right snow stake. And so I just kind of like did a couple scrub turns as I was coming in to kind of make sure. And then once I knew I was on target, I let it go. But basically I came down and I ripped it. I just had like a really good run. It was great. Like I envisioned the run exactly how I wanted it. And I'm going to do a heel turn right by that sign. I'm going to flow into my toe, and then I'm going to just point it down, hit the transition, ride out. And sure enough, I just hit the line exactly how I envisioned it, rode out, and then the whole chair just erupted. Everyone just started screaming and clapping and yelling. And from that day on, like, so many people saw it, and it was, I guess, such a clean run that was the day that literally dubbed it the Hatch run. It was between, like, I don't know, maybe the people that saw it from the chair, and then the shot ended up in the movie, into one of our Standard Films flicks, and then it was in Transworld. And I don't know, I guess there was just so many people that saw it that it forever became the Hatchet line after that. And it was funny because that day I had so many people come up to me down at like Dave's Deli. They would see me like, dude, I saw you run in the fingers. That was so sick. That was flawless. And I remember right when I finished, right when I hit the transition and I did a big toe turn, and I just had a big grin on my face. And I heard this guy from the chair yell, "Nice run, Yellow," because I had a yellow jacket on. So that was like, it was just funny. It was like the guy yelled, "Nice run," and then this guy Dana McCorkle, the surfer guy from Santa Barbara, a good friend of mine, he saw me at Dave's Deli and was like, "Dude, that was the smoothest, most flawless run. Like, that was just so perfect. How do you do that shit?" So it was funny. It was just kind of a funny story behind a line that had been skied or snowboarded so many times in the past. And I don't know, maybe that happens a lot with like some of the runs at Squall, that you think some of these names are in the Squallywood book, and why are they named that? And
right.
Did some guy do this in 1950 on wooden skis?
Right. Yeah, I mentioned that Jason Mack took me down the Coleman chute, which is a pretty obvious chute from the chair. Like, it's right down the middle of everything, basically. And I was like, I was just so hyped, dude. It's so crazy to be at Squaw Valley, Lake Tahoe. I'd never been to California before to snowboard ever. And my first day I'm riding by myself, and this guy's pointing out the Hatchet line and pointing out the nose. And I just thank you so much for lending me that pass. It was like the most insane day of my life. I just did a couple runs down the saddle when I got there, because I'm scared. I'm looking around going like, I don't know where to go.
Yeah, it's nice to have a tour guide your first run Squaw.
Yeah, so that's good. Yeah. That's good. I also looked back up from the saddle, and I was like, oh, those fingers or those little chutes look really good. So I just popped in the last one. I think it's called Dead Tree or something.
Exactly.
And I was like, okay, well, here it goes. Because it's early season, it's a real, like, make or break drop in. Like you got to do or die. Like it's like you're either in or you're not.
Yeah.
But then as soon as you're on it, it's just like nice, wide open, really like such a beautiful run right under the lifts, you know?
Definitely some exposure there when you first drop in. You got to basically drop in and make a pretty critical turn and get over to the rider's right.
Yes.
And if you don't make that turn, there's basically just huge cliffs and trees that you could kind of get swept off.
Yeah.
Of. So it's a,
it was a wild one to be riding like by myself and kind of exploring like, and trying to remember what it looked like from the bottom, but it was pretty straightforward, and it was so much fun. I totally was hooked right away. Like, okay, KT22 is like the zone.
Yeah, there's a lot of pretty exposed gnarly stuff on KT. That's it's pretty impressive. You can get into some pretty wicked situations for just a kind of a classic California Tahoe ski resort. You wouldn't think that there's that critical of lines, but a lot of people say KT is the single best chairlift in the world, and that's coming from a lot of experienced skiers and snowboarders have been all over the world, skied all over Europe, BC, Baker, everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Whistler, Blackcomb, Baker, it's all insane.
Yeah.
But I'm talking like single best chairlift. Like,
because the access is right there.
Yeah, it's 1,500 vertical feet. You go up, there's no traversing.
Nothing. You're just like on the line.
Yeah,
you're like zoop. And you're on the line.
Yeah, it goes right up from the parking lot. It's no fuss.
Plus, a lot of those lines, like you were saying, you got that chairlift just coming up, watching what you're doing. It's like, you know, you feel like a rock star up in there.
Yeah, you can see a lot of what you're riding.
Yeah,
and there's big cliffs, there's small cliffs, there's turns to cliffs, there's turn to cliff to turns to cliff. There's double drops, triple drops. There's wide open pow. There's wind lips, cat tracks. We have these runs on KT like when it fills in a little bit more than it is now, and it's a good pow day and you have good visibility. We have these runs where you literally do, I'm not joking, like 8 or 10 pretty decent jumps all in one run. So you're like turns off the wind lip, a couple more turns off the hip, down off the cat road, boom, another cat road, hip. Like it's insane, and because I've been riding there so long, I know every little feature.
Yeah,
and we all know them. All the locals know them, and you just kind of get in these trains where everyone lines up and you all give each other some space.
Yeah.
So you don't land on each other, and you just one guy goes off, then you, and it's just fun. And I don't know if I've ever seen too many chairlifts where you can catch so much air and flow so many turns all in a row on a single chairlift like that. It's pretty insane. And of course it's California, it's Tahoe, so we have our share of rain and wet snow, and we have our days when it's not good. Every resort does, but when it's good in Tahoe, it's as good as anywhere I've ever been. That's for sure.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be really good by Sunday.
Yeah, hopefully these snow levels drop and we get some 4,000, 5,000 foot snow levels and get a foot of below or in the parking lot at Squaw. And it'll be game on at Squaw. Then I'll take you on some of those jump runs.
Oh, I would love that. That would be unbelievable. I don't think that I've ever been on a chair that's like that. Like every direction you go, there's fall line.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny. I'm 53 now, so the airs are getting smaller. The tricks are getting not as good, and it's funny. I can barely grab my board anymore. I think it's like I'm so unflexible. Like I literally just go down to do an indie now, and it feels like a struggle. So, but Nick Parado always said, "Why even grab your board? It's attached to your feet. What's the point?"
Yeah. There's some people now that really can make non-grab stuff look really, really good.
Yeah, that's tough. That's not me. But I still like doing the jump runs. I still like catching the air and riding. It's just my body hurts a little bit more, and definitely a lot of pain and suffering after a day of riding for me these days. A lot of knee pain and back pain, but I still love it. And I still do it, and I'm gonna keep riding until I can't.
I made the mistake today of buying a Boreal pass like this morning because it's like $25 Boreal Day, right? Like it's like some sort of and it's going to a good cause and Roach is up there, so I'm like, oh, I gotta go. But then when you were like, hey, I got this pass you could use, you want to go try and get up into the snow line? I was like, I'm not passing that up for sure. And then I made plans with Corey to go down and maybe meet him tonight. And while I was riding, I did 9 runs. So like on that 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th run, I was like, oh man, my legs. Just at the bottom where it's chundery, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to have legs for tonight. And I don't care because the top stuff was just so good. I think I lucked out. I don't think that this is a normal... I think typically if there was that much snow, there'd be a lot more people there, but it was just like a weird forecast, so people didn't go for it, you know what I mean? And it's early season. It's been raining for a few days. and people are just kind of in their houses. I always seem to nail this. The couple weeks before Christmas, people are just thinking about other stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think the couple weeks before Christmas, basically the first 2 weeks of December is always the least crowded at Squaw. And then once everyone gets all their new skis and snowboards, it becomes kind of a shit show at Squaw. The lift lines get pretty aggravating.
There was not ever one person in front of me, not one time, not one chair was there anybody in front of me.
That's classic. You were going to ride with Chris Roach up at Boreal today? Or?
Yeah. He was doing like a demo. He had his kid up there.
I rode with him day before yesterday at Squaw. I love riding with Chris. He was there with Devin, and it's just Roach is so classic. He's obviously from the same era that I came from, and he's just got this huge smile on his face when he snowboards, and he's got the passion that he's always had, and it's just great to ride with guys like that are still totally into it, because it seems like a lot of people definitely dropped off the face of the earth as far as snowboarding once their pro careers were over and they got older.
A lot of injuries too, right?
Injuries, and people just get different. People get into surfing, and I totally understand that. I mean, we all love to surf, so people do other things. Injuries that maybe financially they get strapped, and it's just too hard and expensive to get to the mountains. But there's just a certain amount of people that I run across that just always had the passion to ride, and Chris is one of them. And those are the fun people to ride with for sure. The people who just love to snowboard for no other reason than just to snowboard. Which is kind of why we all started.
Definitely gives me butterflies to think about riding with that guy. Like the impact he had on just like style in snowboarding.
It was so funny to see that. I was riding behind him a couple days, the day before yesterday, and he hit this little jib on the left, and I went right after him on the jib, and it was like literally a 2 foot air, and he traveled like 2 feet, but he just made it look so sweet. All he did was ollie, but it just had classic Chris Roach style. And then I went off it until he dorked off it. And I don't know, maybe it was kind of cool, but I did a little ollie pop, but it was 20% of the style that Roach had. But he's just, everything he does is he's just style.
Yeah, Roach and Rank really had a lot to do with shaping the sport, right? Because there was a period, and I'm interested for your take on this, because you eventually became one of the gatekeepers of the progression of the sport through standard films, and you were a really respectable rider. I don't want to discount any of that by saying this, but Roach and Rank would really, they would be very vocal about like wacky style, because there was some wacky style coming into at the tail end of the 80s into the 90s. There was still a lot of like suitcase grabs and just
there's always wax D's.
Yeah.
It's out there.
But they were really, I think, integral in creating that 90s kind of look of snowboarding. Not just the two of them, because there's Hetzel and there's all sorts of skaters that came in. Noah's another one but I think those two really took it to heart, that they were like,
one, for a good reason. It's styles, everything. You can do the most insane trick in the book, but you can, if it doesn't look that great doing it, who cares? You can watch someone else do a way easier trick, and if they just flow it and have style, it's way funner to watch. Mm-hmm. And it's just funner to do too. Every snowboarder knows the feeling. It's when you do something sweet and you nail it and you got style, you feel it. And by the same token, when you do something whack, it feels whack. It feels lame. You're like, that just sucked. That did not feel good. I was trying to just do the little Chris Roach ollie off that little 2 foot bump, and it just didn't happen. So I don't know. Those guys nailed it on the head, man. It's all about style. It's all about just the flow and the elegance of good style. And that's, every sport really, you can tell, not just snowboarding, but skating, surfing, whatever, golf. It's all about style, man. It's not really about the technicalness of it. And if you can combine both and ride everything, then you're kind of the king, right?
Totally. Speaking of the king, there was a era in there with Damien where he would win most extreme rider of the year, a year after he'd blown his knee and he hadn't ridden anymore, right? There was something about his style, even though he had a 17-inch stance and was riding hard boots.
16 and a quarter, I believe.
Was it really?
No, his was 7, mine was 16 and a quarter. We got down to quarter inches, I remember.
But I don't know if you agree, but I felt like, because I've gone back and watched some of that footage, and I'm like, no, there's something about his style that's actually undeniable. He's good.
No, there was a point in snowboarding I felt like he was kind of the best snowboarder.
Yes.
It was right when I first got on avalanche snowboards, and I started riding, and Damien was already on the team, and it was Tom Burt, Jim Zellers, Dana Nicholson, me and Damien, and we would ride Donner Ski Ranch every day, and I would follow Damien around on powder days. And it was the same thing I was talking about with Roach. I mean, he just hit this little bump, a little wind lip, whatever. And no matter what feature he hit, he would style it so perfect. It was whether it was a 2-foot air or 20-foot air, he would just use up the amount of air time and just do the perfect trick that fit that hit that he was doing. And it wasn't pre-planned. We were just free riding down the mountain. It wasn't like, okay, we're filming 3, 2, 1. I'm going to do a switch 7. It was like just total spur of the moment, whatever, backside air, indie, backflip, 360. He was just riding and flowing. And his general thing was he would always go twice as big as any of us, and he'd have just perfect style.
Yeah.
And it was insane. Like we would all maybe be doing a booter, and we'd be 40 yards above the jump, and he'd go 80 yards above and just point it all the way and just go so huge. And yeah, he definitely had. He was one of the most stylish riders for sure. I remember, and he would always get huge cheers from the chairlift. I remember like riding, he would hit a jump and everyone would cheer and flip out. And he just had kind of like pizzazz and his haircut and the day glow and just the whole thing, the whole package was just insane. It was. Did
you start filming, or I guess it would have been your brother who was filming like all the way back, like Western Front days, or was that somebody else that? What
was I filming or being filmed?
You were being filmed during that time, but was your brother filming for those?
He was
guys?
shooting stills. So what happened was like that. Those were like literally my first couple years of pro snowboarding.
Yeah.
And I was shooting stills with like Transworld, like John Foster and Guy Motil and the early photographers. And then pretty much Jared Nardi basically, I think, made one of the first snowboard movies ever was Western Front. Maybe Dogger was just starting to dabble.
Yeah.
So I was riding, and that's right when Mike kind of started he started out with stills. He was shooting stills during the Western Front year.
Oh, wow.
And then I believe it was like the year after that he started dabbling in working with Fall Line and shooting.
It probably wasn't even Fall Line at that point, was it? Because it was Fusion Films.
No,
or something?
It was called. What it was FLF? Why am I tripping?
Fall Line Films is FLF.
Yeah, but they had to change their name because someone else already had it, and it was maybe it was just Fall Line, then they had to change it to FLF or.
Oh, I see.
I'm tripping on the exact history of that.
There
was some debacle with someone already had their name and they had to change it. I think it was just Fall Line Films, and then they had to just call it FLF.
Oh, I see. Well,
excuse me for my not.
Oh,
my
it's
history.
Totally fine, man.
It's been 20 years.
No, it's 30 now.
Oh, damn, I'm old.
Yeah, me too.
Don't say that.
I watched Western Front. Like, I didn't have any kind of musical taste before that, so for a while I thought, okay, I'm into. What was that called? Industrial music or whatever. I'm like, I'm into this. This is good. Whatever this is.
that movie, pretty much the whole movie was filmed at Squaw. They basically let snowboarding being allowed on a trial basis in April. Snowboarding had never been allowed at any of the big resorts, and especially not in Squaw or Tahoe. And they said, okay, boys, we're going to let you go on there in April. We're going to give you a couple months to ride at Squaw, and if everything goes good, we're going to allow you all, pure next year, all season. And so we went there and shredded Squaw with Damien and Dana and Noah and Roach and the whole. And
everybody was in that movie.
Yeah, it was classic. And we filmed, and Jerry Nardi just had this like gigantic. I can't remember what they were filming. This was some archaic, huge old like Beta cam with a big deck strapped to their backpack.
Rad.
And and it was all just basically like mountain run hits. It was all like little teeny jibs, and it was all the little natural. There's a spot up on Headwall called Skateboarder's Gully and there's a whole bunch of cool little wind lips in there, and a lot of that movie was filmed on those little hits and little cornice drops and cat tracks.
Yeah, it was so sunny. It was like a sunny kind of slushy. Yeah, it was
a sunny. Yeah, and I mean, what are the airs are like 2 to 4 feet off the ground.
No, there was some big stuff in that.
Damien probably.
yeah, exactly.
I'd have to watch the movie again, but I remember a majority of it was just filmed at Squaw on the hits, and Was there? I can't. It's been so long since I've seen that. Is there any backcountry or cliff dropping or anything?
No, I don't think so. I think it's all just kind of like there's a lot of moguls in it actually.
The bumps.
The bumps.
Well,
yeah.
Shoot, Avalanche had to make a board named the Bumps.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, they only had those 2 boards, I think, at that point. I got the Kick 175.
Yeah. I think the tight stances made the bump riding pretty fun.
Yeah, probably right. Yeah, that was. I always thought of that as like Dana's board or something. Dana would always ride the bumps.
Yeah, the bumps and the 175. That's funny.
Yeah, the boards were huge back then too, just like massive. I was talking with, I forget, maybe Aaron or maybe UC about how huge stuff was in the early 90s, like cliff dropping. Oh yeah, see, when I'm talking about like fall line stuff, that's not you wouldn't watch that over and over again because you were in it.
Yeah.
But that would be the competing guys, right?
Well, yeah, but
at some point.
After the year after that, when we did fusion films, which then became standard. But
yeah,
I think I watched it a few times.
Well, I'm thinking of that Damian Sanders, Steve Graham cliff drop, wherever the hell that is.
Yeah, that's up on I-80. Sorry, that's up at ASI right at Donner.
Yeah,
Hero Rock.
It's insane how big that is.
Yeah, it's huge.
And Graham stomps it.
Yeah, it goes. It's probably anywhere from like 30 to 50, depending on how much snow is filled in and how big you go, how much speed you take it with.
So according to Damien, on that chute right there at the top, he said to Grammy, "What are you going to do?" And Steve was like, "Straight air, obviously. What are you going to do?" And he's like, "I'm going to flip it." And then Steve was like, "Oh, please don't. I don't want to be here when you die or whatever." And so he like just didn't, but he always wished that he would have flipped it because he biffed it anyways.
Yeah, he would have.
Yeah,
I know the shot you're talking of. And I think when he went off it was really big.
It was massive.
That could have even been like a 60 or 70. I'll have to look again, but it's generally speaking, it's about a 40-ish foot cliff when it's on normal conditions. But like I said, you take it with a little bit of extra speed, or it's lower snow year. Who knows how far you're going to go.
And then how was Parada in those years? Because I felt like he was just stomping everything.
He was really good at nailing flat cliff drops. He had really good style. He was
such good style.
He was kind of one of the first guys with the kind of skatey snowboard style.
Yeah.
And he was really, really good at landing flat cliffs.
Totally.
That was kind of his thing.
Yeah, he just stomped them, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
Or everybody else was kind of, arm dragging or
flapping and sitting. And...
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the Fusion year is... What movie is Fusion?
That's Totally Bored. That was
Totally Bored.
Yes.
And the animation and everything. I've watched that in the last year or so, and it holds up. It's so fun to watch.
Yeah, it's definitely a classic. There's something about those old movies, like nowadays with the drones and the GoPros and everyone's just triple cork this, that. It's like it's a little bit more diluted with it. There's just so many good riders and the cinematography equipment is so good.
It's not surprising is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and that drone shot's at that weird angle where it kind of makes everything look the same.
Yeah,
no matter what the person's doing.
Yeah,
no offense to anyone that shoots with drones. Obviously, it's amazing footage too, but it's just not close enough to the ground. You know what I mean? Like you'd never shoot overhead of somebody doing an air.
Yeah, there's definitely something about those old movies, the original, some of the early standard movies and whatever, FLF, and you think about some of the ski movies, like Stump movies and Blizzard of Oz, and there's just, those things are just timeless classics that kind of we all as snowboarders and skiers watched and kind of evolved into. And obviously nowadays most of the stuff is way more insane. The airs are bigger, the tricks are harder, the riders are better, there's more good riders, the cinematography equipment's way better, but it's just kind of like watered down and diluted, and I don't know, there's maybe not as much heart in it, or even if you pull a really good edit, because that's the only way you really set yourself apart nowadays, is tell a great story or having a really incredible edit that just kind of keeps the viewer captivated. Yeah,
would you ever have guessed there'd be like 2 or 3 crews again? Like it was for a while there, it was hundreds. It was like every local scene had 2 or 3 guys that were filming all their buddies, and then grabbing a couple of the local heroes and getting them in a movie. Like there had to be a point where there were 100 movies in a year.
Yeah, definitely. Well, then rewind back to like Warren Miller, his first ski movies. He would just go to a ski resort and film like the ski instructors. Here we are at Arapahoe Basin, and we got and they'd go film the ski instructors or whatever, and that was his seggy. And it was more like travel oriented. It was more about we went here, we went there, and how it was more about profiling how good the snow was, how beautiful the mountains were versus just a snowboard porn of.
Well, probably what was going on there too, which makes sense, is that he would call the mountains and say, I'm going to do my movie at your mountain. Do you want to give me some lift tickets and accommodations and some meals at your best restaurants?
Which makes sense.
Yeah. And he was doing that as opposed to like by your era, you're getting travel budget and you're getting, you know what I mean? So now it's like, you're going to try and get that board in the air so that the base shot is there. It's not so much about the travel as it is about the athletes, right? Like
exactly.
That's exactly what happens.
In his first movies, I mean, there probably were no pro skiers other than maybe ski racers and Olympic skiers, but there wasn't people getting paid to free ski and be in movies and magazines. That hadn't even came around yet.
Was the first kind of era of that Glenn Plake and Scott Schmidt?
I would say for skiing, that's the first that I kind of remember.
That caught my attention as a kid. Like I've never skied, not ever. Like I think I tried one run and then I had to carry them down and slide down in the boots. Like I just never did. But I was fascinated with Plake and Schmidt and the way that they rode a mountain looked like fun. Everything else in those movies was like ski ballet and like competitive gate bashing and like weird compared to like, oh man, these guys are just like free riding around, catching huge airs.
Yeah, those guys are pretty instrumental in putting free skiing and free riding on the map. I mean, they were kind of the forefathers of it, really.
I remember Plake strapped on a snowboard in one of those movies too, and I was like, okay, he can just do whatever the hell he wants. That guy's a nut.
Yeah, one of those guys, just good at everything.
Yeah.
Like Palmer, just
holy jeez, Palmer.
I'll just be a pro mountain biker for a while.
Oh, so I think I talked to you on the first year I had the show. And I called you from Grouse Mountain. I was riding and I just like tucked away in a little cove and sat there like overlooking the city. And it was such an amazing conversation. The fact that you were one of the only guys to film for both like mega crews in the first years of like those big snowboard only movies. I went back and it's funny, I didn't give you the credit that you were due because I was such a Damien guy. Like if you weren't doing backflips, it just didn't get on my radar.
I hear you.
But I've since gone through and I saw that you've got pictures of it here, the Mendenhall Towers. Oh, geez, dude. Like that's just all time.
Yeah, that was pretty fun, pretty intense.
I was talking with Sedway about those Alaska years because I kind of got the impression from some people that it was sort of just like a free-for-all. You know, you weren't even riding with packs, and it was like, you know, you could just go anywhere. But Aaron put it into perspective. Everybody was being safe, but it was such a new frontier. Like you guys were allowed to stay out super late, you know, whereas everybody's got to come in early now.
Yeah, I think it was more loose with the guides and the helis, the way they ran their operations. Mm-hmm. But we all had, you know, beacons and shovels and probes, and we were trained and we were ready to save ourselves if it happened. Hopefully we would have pulled off a rescue, but we were ready. Yeah. We had the equipment to do it. It wasn't like we weren't out there with beacons and just
right. Just riding like crazy.
Yeah. We were prepared.
Right.
And, you know, thank God nothing ever happened, but,
which is incredible. It's a testament to how professional you guys were out there. Yeah. That's good.
That, and also too, I think the snowpacks of Alaska, it's just a really dependable snowpack. That coastal snow that we get in Whistler and Baker and Tahoe in Alaska is just so much safer than the continental mountains, and you can kind of get away with murder up there. It's unbelievable what you can ride and have it not slide on you.
Yeah, and Aaron was saying that the forestry agency up there has cracked down and been like, you guys can't go in there. Like, whereas before you guys were just like, what about this zone? And they're like, let's go, you know, like
now it's on their radar and everyone's got to keep each other safe.
Yeah. He was saying Super Spines was somewhere that is probably lost to antiquity. Like it's now in a protected forest zone, and
that's a bummer.
Yeah. No, nobody else gets to ride it.
That's sad.
But it's still, I mean, it's kind of cool too, actually, in a way that it's sort of frozen in time. Yeah. That it's not getting, you know, somebody's not doing a quad cork down it.
Quad cork down the Super Spines. Not sure how that would work, but it could be pretty sweet.
How often do you ride now? You've got passes at all the best mountains here.
Yeah, I ride every day if it's good. If it's POW, I pretty much just climb, and I climb all summer. My brother and I, Mike, do a lot of rock climbing. So I'm pretty much climbing all summer, and then I try and sprinkle in a couple surf trips if I can, like Central America or Baja. And then once winter hits, I'm pretty much chilling in Tahoe, and I'm riding every day. It's good. And I'm not like the hardcore guy where I'm going to be out there 4 or 5 days a week, regardless of
if it's raining
or icy. Yeah. I'm not going to go ride the park. I'm not going to go hurt myself on a jib or a railing or a metal rail or something. I'm just those days are way long gone. Not that I ever really did rails anyways, but it's all about POW. And
do you still have lines that you want to bag, like where you're thinking like, oh, if this fills in, I'm going to do this? I occasionally do lines that I used to do, like some of the hairier lines. I actually did. There's this thing up in Sunken Meadow that I did last year that I hadn't. There was a shot of me like in TB6 doing it. It's a pretty cool line. It's a big face down to a pretty nice drop at the end. And it's semi high consequence if the thing slides or whatever. And I did that last year, and it was cool. That was probably the hardest line I had done in quite a while. Rad. So, but I'm definitely not looking to do anything hairier than I ever did. That's for sure. Right. And I'm rarely even doing the stuff that I did before. It's more like cruising, just turns and little airs, and everything's just smaller and easier. I still like to ride fast. I feel like I can ride the POW and the chop as good as I ever could. Right. As far as just like charging KT on a powder day and just bombing down west faces, bouncing through the crud and the chop and the POW. And I feel like my technique and I'm as good as that as I ever was, for sure. But definitely not looking to get busy on any kind of gnarly cliff lines or that ship has sailed. It's just, it's weird. When you're young, when you're 20 and 30, I'm going to do it forever and I'll never stop. And then you get older, and I remember even riding with older guys when I was like 30, and that guy's a pussy. What's his deal? I'm not really considering his age, and that guy used to launch 60-foot cliffs. What's his problem now? He's just making, we're riding together, and he's over on the side making some cash turns, and I'm thinking, you wimp. And now that I'm that old, now I'm like, okay, now I get it. Been there, done that. I survived. Like, how many times do I want to keep taking that risk? You have kids. It becomes more like fun becomes the bottom line versus like trying to like always one up and do something super hairball. Right. A really good day counts for so much now. Exactly. It's so funny how it erases if you have a really good day, like, or even a crappy day. Then your day is only as good as that one day, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's all, yeah. I ride all the time. I love riding POW. I just definitely don't do the gnarly lines like I used to. And I was, really obsessed in my late teens and early 20s back TB2, 3, 4 when I was filming those parts. Yeah, I just lived for it. I would look at a mountain, I would look in lines, I would look at these rock faces, and I was so obsessed with just trying to find a way, like a technical, fast way down a gnarly line. It was maybe not the gnarliest not gnarly billy goating, but a little bit just this side of billy goating, but something that could flow and go fast. And I feel like that was kind of what I was more my style when I was into, was just like hard lines that weren't super, exposed. And there was a point in my life where that's all I wanted to do. And that's kind of really what I made my career around, and all my shots in the movies and the mags. It was all, technical rad lines. And I felt like I got, pretty good at it. But nowadays, it's just more like POW and cruising. And I ride Homewood a lot. I live in Homewood, and there's this cool small ski resort right in my backyard. I can walk right to the chair. Yeah, it's right there. And, it's right at lake level, so it's kind of rare that we have to have good cold storms, and it's rare to get the good snow. But it's steep enough. When we get good cold storms and it's not too deep. If you get like waist deep POW, it's no good because it's not steep enough to handle the deeper snow. Yeah. But if you get like 8-10 inches, a foot of like light, blower POW, then it's really good. Yeah, so I ride there a lot because it's close to my house, and it's not as competitive and as crowded as Squaw. There's no traffic. There's not a big lift lines. It's right, and it's just I rode there with Downey last year and his kids and Shannon, and we had a blast. And sick. I have Rylan Bell, who's I ride with a lot now, who is just a really great, accomplished snowboarder who's been in a lot of Jeremy's movies, and he's just an insane charger, and he's a really good freestyle rider too. And I made him a believer over here Homewood a couple days. That's awesome. So I've got to have some fun sessions with some of the boys over here, and I ride there with my kids a lot, and it's just it's great. It's just a cool, fun, cruisy mountain. And rumor has it Kidwell used to go there a lot, but I never see them. I never see him anymore. I try and hook up with him, but I never see him there. So I don't know. Well, he's got a pro model again. Does he? Smoking. this year.
Well, maybe that'll motivate him.
Yeah.
To come ride with Davey Boy at Homewood. Homewood's that's Kidwell's old stomping grounds. And,
that's sick.
Kimmel and Kidwell and those guys.
Yeah, I should talk to Kimmel and Lori Gibbs too.
Yeah, they're around.
Yeah. And you mentioned Dave and Shannon. They say hi.
Oh, right on. Cool.
Yeah, when I was at their place, I was saying that I was going to link up with you, and they're like, "Oh, tell them we said hey."
Rad. Yeah. They're great. He's Dave's super fun to ride with, and his kids were charging pretty hard.
Yeah.
We were charging down some power runs at Homewood last year, and I just turned around and they were just right on my ass.
That's epic.
They were charging, riding fast and riding good. And
yeah, we were talking with the kids about the high school surf team and how that format really has made it super spectator friendly and also really competitive in a really fun way. So I don't know if you know this, but it used to just be head-to-head heats all the time, right? So you'd send your one guy against the other guy, but now you send out you pick your 3 guys to go against the other school's 3 guys, and the combo of the 3 has to beat out the other school. So it's a cumulative thing.
That's cool.
And it turns out really rad for spectating, right? Because you're watching, and if there's a superstar on your team, plus your kids are out there too, or your kid's a superstar, it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, it's probably funner as a competitor too, I'd imagine. Cause
yeah,
it's a little more of a team vibe.
I want to bring that to snowboarding. I mean, not myself personally because I don't have anything to do with it, but I'd like to encourage anyone who does, having a team vibe, 3 people riding. You know what I mean? In a heat format where okay, there's 6 people on course, two teams, 3 guys each, and the cumulative points that they score moves them on to the next round. It would just be a fun contest to watch.
No, it's cool.
Instead of the one guy coming down and kind of picking a line here and there and not hitting all the features, you could have 6 people on the mountain that you're just whoa.
Yeah. That reminds me, we did way back in the day. This was probably it must have been 88 or something. We did a demo at Brighton out in Utah, and it was kind of like that, but it wasn't a contest, but it was a demo.
Rad.
So all these people came just to kind of spectate and watch snowboarding.
Yeah.
And it was the Avalanche team. It was the GNU team.
Rad.
It was all these teams. And we would all go out. They built a big kicker right down at the bottom of the mountain, and we would all go off in succession. So on the Avalanche team, it was, I can't remember who went first, but it was Tom Bird, then Zellers, then me, then Dana, and then Damien would always go last, and he'd just do a huge backflip. So we'd go off, we'd do grasser, Indy, boom, tail grab, and then Damien would come on and at the end to just throw this huge backflip, and the whole crowd would erupt and cheer. And then the GNU team would come out and they would do Jeff Davis and all these guys were all doing slob and lean airs and different kind of grabs than we were doing, and so it was cool. It was that kind of a format, but you got to kind of watch the different styles and the different, riders, and the announcer was kind of right on par with it, kind of announcing everything.
That's so sick.
And it was, it was cool. And I'm trying to remember some of the other teams were there, but it was Salty Peaks and GNU and Avalanche. Now I'm desperate to remember who else was there, but it was.
That sounds so rad.
Yeah, it was good. So yeah, that was definitely a bit of the format you're talking about, but more from a little blast from the past. And I can't really remember much about it. I just do remember that Dennis Nazari, do you know who that guy's name? He's an old Salty Peaks Utah rider.
Rad.
I just remember he went off the jump. It was gnarly. He went off the jump and he spun out and he slid head first 50 yards down the hill and went head first into one of the lift poles.
Oh my God.
And it was gnarly, and he got a concussion. And I remember Chris Sanders ran over there, Damien's brother, who's the owner of Avalanche Snowboards, ran over there, and it was gnarly. It was like this, he ate crap right at the bottom of this, during this demo. And I think he was okay. I think it was just ended up being a mild concussion, as I remember, but
that's nasty.
That was the only highlight I can really remember. That. And
do you remember anything about the previous generation, like Dmitry Milovich and Tom and
Tom Sims?
Yeah, and Jake. Had that happened at that moment where you become a pro rider and you could go back and look at the Terry Kidwell years and that kind of thing? I
have a little slight memories of riding with Terry, the very first years, and I got to ride with Tom Sims one time ever.
Oh wow.
So we were up at Slide Mountain, and I'd literally just gotten my first snowboard. I want to say it was 1983.
Oh jeez.
And my friend Alistair and I, we split the cost on this it was a Sims 1500 FE. And Slide was allowing snowboard at that time, Slide and Mount Rose, and we went up there, And sure enough, Tom Sims was there with Palmer.
No way.
And I was just tripping because I barely knew anything about snowboarding, much less pro snowboarding, but I knew who they were.
And Palmer at that time would have been like a child.
Yeah, he was like, I want to say he was 15, 14, and mini shred. He was and I'll never forget, I was at the top and I was kind of struggling to get my bindings on. It was the Fast X buckles that you kind of clipped over the top here. And Tom Sims came up and let me show you. And he said, how many, and I remember he asked me, so how much have you ridden, or have you snowboarded before? Like that was his first question, almost kind of like sternly asked me. And I was like, well, this is like maybe my third day snowboarding. And it was my first day on a resort and I could barely get my bindings on, but it was cool.
And Tom Sims is helping you clip up your,
my
God.
And Tom takes the time to go over there and he shows me how to get into my bindings. And he's, I get strapped in, and then we ended up kind of following him around that day, following him and Sean around, and it was cool. It was that's the only thing I can really remember about those days. And I remember riding with Kidwell a little bit back in Donner Ski Ranch, but yeah, that was really my only. I never got to ride or hang with Jake, unfortunately. Because he was on the East Coast, and so it was kind of happening.
But you rode for Burton for a while.
I rode for Burton forever, and Jake, he was so supportive. I mean, he was so great what he did for me. He literally for 7 years of my life, I got to travel the world and snowboard wherever I wanted, for free. I mean, whatever. I mean, I did my job. I did what I was under contract, but he paid me to go snowboarding and gave me all the free stuff I wanted for 7 years of my life. So I definitely am not complaining. And Jake was so influential and so supportive of snowboarding. That's what blew me away. Is like everything he did was he gave back so much to snowboarding.
So cool to hear from a West Coaster, because Tom had such a lockdown on this side of the country, right?
Yeah, it was like East versus West. Or
yeah.
whatever. And I've always wondered why. I don't know why Burton became so successful, just as far as the company it is, versus why Sims never really did. Like I
think there was a moment where Tom was in the lead. The 1500 FE was or the 1500 was 4 or 5 years ahead of everything that came. You know what I mean? Like 1988, then the Craig Kelly or the Mystery Air really pushed it in the other direction.
Yeah.
But I just don't think Tom or, like there was a bunch of people like
Chuck Barfoot.
Oh yeah, Chuck, right. I just don't think that Tom had the team and the back end together as well as Jake did. I think
maybe the business savvy too.
Yeah,
I think Jake was just maybe a little more business wise and maybe had better investing. And
in the years, there was only a couple of years in there where it was make or break. Burton expanded the line in the proper way, right? Like all of a sudden there was kids boards in a couple of sizes. There was, like 3 sizes of each of the styles of boards, and they put together like a package. Like their catalog was like, it's proper, like a proper catalog with all the right SKUs. And then Tom's company maybe changed hands or something.
Yeah, it seems like they were always struggling financially. Like the product was pretty solid, and they had Noah and they had their riders, but it just always seemed like they were just a little bit behind as far as the product and just everything, the whole package, and then Burton just erupted into.
I think that Tom liked to snowboard more than he liked to do the business stuff.
Yeah,
and I think this is what I've heard. I've heard that Sims skateboards got beat out by Vision. You know what I mean? Like Vision was that first really big skateboard company that just kind of like ate up everybody else. And Tom was crazy about not getting beaten by Vision again.
Yeah.
And so he went and he's like, if you can't beat them, join them. And he like licensed the name to Vision, right? Like remember the Craig Kelly and the Vision streetwear days and all that stuff. Yeah. And I think that actually did him in as opposed to helped him. You know what I mean? Because, the owner of Vision he could care less about snowboarding. And Tom got his first big check and he went back to Santa Barbara and went gardening and went surfing and just sort of like got too much money too quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As opposed to like being in there designing the boards. From what I've heard, he would come down and just have like drawings of wacky boards and be like, we're going to make this. And the rest of the Sims crew would be like, Bro, the time for designing boards was like 4 months ago. Like, we're already going into pre-production. We've got our samples. We have to go to the trade show. Like, and he'd be like, okay, whatever. You know, that's what I think.
No, I agree. It's probably just in general. I didn't know him that well.
Right.
After those early slide days, I got the pleasure to hang with him here and there.
But I think, I think on the hill as an ambassador of snowboarding and like the 007 stunt double stuff, like, he was poised to be number one, 100%.
Yeah.
If he would have maybe, and it wasn't even him. I think his company kind of was like, there were a lot of people that were high up at Sims that were like, this isn't really our company. Why don't we start Moro, or why don't we go somewhere else and start something that's us? And I think that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, that's legit. And I think it's all good. I mean, whatever, everything happens for a reason, they say.
Yeah.
I don't really know what that statement even means, but yeah, Jake, he put so much back into it. It's all
Burton stayed the course.
Yeah,
Burton was consistent every year.
It's all good now.
Yeah,
like he's. I mean, look what's happened. They were so supportive of the filmers and the riders and just everything that ever happened in snowboarding.
Yeah,
they were right there supporting it, and you got to really realize. I mean, snowboarding is where it's at today. A lot it has to do with Burton and their riders and their support of the film industry and their support of the magazines and everything.
And the athletes, right? Like, I was just
look at the Burton team and look how many crazy riders have came out of. I mean, you just rewind to the very beginning until now. It's just insane.
Yeah,
their resume of riders is off the charts.
Yeah, people would go on the Burton team and then headline some other team, whereas on the Burton team they were just one of a dozen people at that level. It was insane. Yeah, even right from the beginning, like when Ride started, they bought Brushy, according to somebody said, like $1 million contract, like the first $1 million contract for a snowboarder, probably over 5 years or something like that. But still, like, that was a Burton rider. He was the A-lister of that Burton team, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I was a Burton guy back around the Craig Kelly era, and then I started working for a shop in 1993 that didn't carry Burton, so I became any other brand kind of guy. You know what I mean? Like the underdog.
Anything but Burton, like.
Well, we weren't allowed really to ride Burton. Not that we weren't allowed; it was just bad form, right? Like, because we don't sell it. We had to develop a selling against Burton protocol, which people would come in and 5 out of 6 people would say, do you have Burton? And at first we were just saying, no, go across the street or whatever. And then the boss was like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like, ask them another couple of questions. Like, what Burton do you want? And they'd be like, oh, well, my buddy just said.
Yeah, but maybe I should check out this LibTech.
Yeah, exactly. And then you'd put them on something, and then they'd get home, and their friends would be like, whoa, what a cool board, or whatever, right? And the rest is, it wasn't hard to sell against Burton because they had this huge line and that's what I would say. I would say, look, Burton makes low-end boards, mid-end boards, high-end boards. Like, we've got lots of great stuff here that's comparable or better to, like, depending on what you want, know?
It's kind of apples and oranges nowadays. It's Apple versus PC. It's all the hard goods. They all seem like there's a lot of good snowboards out there.
Yeah, what board do you ride right now?
I'm riding I still ride the custom a lot. But I'm riding shorter boards. Back in the day, I was kind of like when I was filming a lot, I was riding 62s and 64s. Yeah. And I've really gotten more into like 58s now, 59s. Yeah. And so I ride the custom 58 a lot,
which is still kind of a popsicle stick compared to, like, there's a lot of like powdery shapes out there.
Well, I have
now.
some of those boards too, but I like the custom for just kind of jibbing around. I like to do a lot of butters and flat ground and little jibs and wall rides. So I'm, like I said, I'm not going big anymore, but I do like to kind of play with them out. And when I see a feature, I can't help but hit it. Yeah. So I feel like the custom is really good on the jibs and the buttering and stuff.
Oh yeah, totally.
And then the deeper powder days, I've been riding the Hometown Hero a lot.
Which board is that?
It's just one of Burton's like kind of powder boards and taper. It's a camber board, but it's it's just more one of the more powdery shapes like you're talking about. It's got a little more pizzazz to the shape, and
long nose.
Downing could break down the whole like. I just strap the thing to my feet and ride. I don't know about that crap.
You just like point in a catalog like I want that
reverse rock or whatever. Blah, 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 Magna traction. I don't even. That's just clicks and whistles to me. If it feels good to me, I ride it. I really don't know that much about the
That's
hard,
amazing.
Yeah, I don't know that much about board design. I mean, honestly,
my kid is working at the shop where I grew up working, right? He's 16, and I worked with him a couple of days, like during like the turkey sale or whatever, and hearing him talk about mustache camber and stuff like that, I'm just like, oh, dude, because he's an intermediate level rider, you know what I mean? Like he's really good compared to like kids his age and all that stuff, but he said something to me about, oh, does this board have mustache camber? I'm like, you don't care, dude. Just ride it. Like, strap your feet in it. You can ride anything. You know what I mean? And a
lot of that stuff is just shelf appeal. And it's, I just feel like it's funny because they start designing all these new boards and all these different things. And a lot of times I just go back to a standard custom camber board. I'm like, you know what? Yeah. This board feels the best or better than anything of all these fancy boards that you guys are riding. It doesn't have the cool little look to it and the shape, and surfing obviously has gone through the same thing too with all the retro shapes and
then a squash tails.
Now everything's kind of like short and wide now and more volume, and it's crazy how surfboard shapes have changed. But you see a lot of the retro, like the Mark Richards twin fin. I see a lot of guys surfing those now, and it's like there's all these like. Retro is in now.
Yeah. I've said it. I'm gonna take my new, because like all these new boards for powder look like boards for like the 1500 FE. Yeah, like it's like pointy, and then it's got a swallowtail. Yeah. And I was telling Rob, and the guy who makes the boards that I ride, I'm going to cut that board down so it's like a 145 twin, with little tiny kicks like the old days. Like if we're going nostalgic, let's go full nostalgic. Mm-hmm. And he's like, don't you dare cut that $800 custom board down into.
Like I said, they're just doing it for shelf appeal. I mean, they're not going to reinvent the wheel.
I got to be honest with you. I started riding those POW shapes. So like it's like a swallowtail with a big scoop and a lot of taper about 2 years ago. And it rides completely different in powder. Like what a machine. Like it's just so much fun to turn on. It's really surfy, really fun.
No, I hear you.
Can't bury the nose.
Yeah, no, the Hometown Hero has that feel too. It's a lot of the same concept.
Yeah.
But again, like for me, the downside of those boards is the jibbing and the buttering and it just doesn't have that. So when you're asking me what kind of board I ride, I do ride those boards on totally deep blizzard days when when I wake up and there's 2 feet on my deck and it's below or POW and I know I'm just going to be wallowing in POW all day. Yeah. That's my board I'm going to ride.
And then you don't come home with a sore leg. That's the main thing.
But on every other day, I'm just on the custom because I just want to jib and play with the mountain and I want to hit the features and I like the way the custom feels on that type of riding.
That's rad that you're in your 50s and you're riding a custom, which is like essentially I don't want to say generic because that's not the right word, but like a perfect freestyle board.
Yeah, it's just and it's great for all around. And like I said too, the shorter boards, I just like the response of it makes me wonder, like, why did I ever ride those big boards? It was probably just because I wanted to land bigger cliffs.
Yeah.
And it does help for that.
Big time, right?
But I just find the shorter boards, 56, 58, for my body size and my body height, way more responsive and quick turning.
More fun, right?
Yeah, it's just more fun. Yeah. Like I'm just less tired at the end of the day. And I feel sorry. Like I see people on 64s and 68s. I'm kind of like, dude, what are you thinking,
just
bro?
Pushing that around.
Oh, no. It's the same thing every time. I'm 180 pounds. I'm 6'4". I'm like, dude, it doesn't matter. Like, okay, you're a little bit bigger and heavier than me, but try a 160. Like just go a little bit down. But I'm telling you, that board's a tank, bro. Like try a short board.
One of the best powder days I ever had was a Heli day with these guys from Natural Concept. I was riding a 159 twin, just set all the way into the back. Like just you take any board and push it all the way to the back. Like I would just put my back disc would be 2 holes only all the way to the back, just like tightened up. And it rode like a dream. It was just, I believe it. It's a tiny little board. I mean, for like, waist deep BC powder. But it was epic.
I think big boards are overrated. You don't really need a big board to float in the powder. I think that's, it's more about just technique and snow conditions. If it's super deep, like basically Farmer always said it, it could never get too deep. Well, sorry, Sean, but it does get too deep.
Yeah.
To be perfect.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. Like today, my brother Mike and I nowadays, we're like the total powder connoisseurs, and we have our our grading system, which obviously goes from A+ to A to B, and we've I'm into the A and the A+ days, and we all are, and it's all about that perfect consistency where it's light, it's fast. You're staying on top of the snow versus sinking in it. It's maybe like boot deep, and you're just hauling ass, and you're just bunnying around, and every little lump that you hit and everything, you just blow through it. Nothing phases you. And you have those days when you snowboard on days like that where you just don't even drag a hand all day. You're just total hero snow, as they call it, right?
Yeah.
And then everything, it just starts going down from there. Then you've got like, okay, it's a little bit wet. It's a little bit, I can't see, like the visibility is a huge factor. It's too deep. And then when it starts to get to like knee to waist deep, it's almost like a different style of riding. You're just like wallowing, and you're just sifting and trying to keep the nose out and leaning back versus just going twice as fast and bunnying and just, hauling ass. It's such a different style of riding. And it's funny because I think, now that Mike and I are older, like I said, I'm 53, I'm this connoisseur, and I have this grading system, and I want A+ conditions, or I want A conditions, and I go out there and I ride these days that aren't as good, and I see people in the chair, it's so sick today, bro, it dumped 2 feet. And I'm thinking, it's kind of wet, you can't see, it's flat light, there's like, I'm just sifting, I'm like, I can't, like the snow setting up, it's like a little bit too heavy, and I don't know, I'm just, call me grumpy, but I just know what like good conditions are, and it's not, staying on top, going fast in light snow blows doors on snow that's too deep and too wet, and it's just,
And then the same goes for just the number of people that are at the resort, right? Like an early morning session where you got there, you didn't miss it, you didn't stop for coffee. Nobody in your group was like, oh, wait, I forgot my gloves, or some weird thing that puts you 5 minutes off the mark, because 5 to 10 minutes is the difference between like hitting it and blowing it.
Yeah, for freshies, for sure.
Yeah.
To me, one thing I've learned after riding, and this doesn't count for backcountry, but this is just resort riding, because it takes a lot more. It takes more for the stars to align, in my opinion, to make a good resort day than a good backcountry day.
Sure.
Because backcountry snow is typically just better. It's untracked.
Yeah.
Whatever, and it doesn't take as good of conditions, wind and snow and all that stuff wise, but the more the snow gets tracked at a resort, if it still stays rippable, if you can lean into a turn and not hit bottom, and it's still soft enough just to really rail into your turns and just flow and never get bucked around, that's your A+ day, right? It's just that right consistency. But when the snow, one thing that will really tip that scale the wrong direction is the heavier snow. And it's like quick drying cement. Like once you start putting tracks in it, you go down third or fourth run and it's all chewed up. And it's just bunk because it's all too heavy. It was fun on the first run because it was all in track and you just kind of floated through it.
Yeah.
But now that's all crud and it's chewed up, it's hard because it's like quick drying cement. It's kind of sticky and gooey.
That was today.
Yeah. but yeah, so that's like back to my grading system.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, I mean, the mountain gets mutilated in an hour now.
Yeah.
I mean, Whistler, take your pick. I mean, it's just
Baker.
Yeah. There's just so
an
much.
hour.
Yeah. There's so many riders and there's so many good riders. It's not just the main runs that are getting tracked. It's like the lines are getting tracked, like the gnarly stuff's getting tracked.
Totally.
So you got to kind of really, you got to like enjoy skiing or snowboarding chewed up snow and choppy snow. And I do. And it's funny, people are going to laugh, but I almost like tracked snow better than untracked snow. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I'm like in a backcountry situation, fluffy, perfect powder, you see a sick line and you rail it.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate. Okay. But to me, untracked snow, you're going to laugh. It's almost like too easy sometimes. Whereas like, I find that like the track snow, if it's just the right conditions, this is resort riding. I'm not talking heli boarding Alaska.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit more challenging and it's more fun because you're getting kind of bucked around. You're having to like find transitions and bunny and like it's just more action packed. And again,
that's incredible.
Yeah, like I'm probably the only person in the world that's ever going to say that.
I agree with you there.
But I think that some snowboarders are going to kind of at least understand where I'm coming from. Like I used to, and this is kind of coming back from my days of ride with Noah. He was always finding the transition and he was bunnying and he was alling and we'd be riding the squad. We'd be going on the chop together. And half the time he was in the air, like leaping over these ruts and just landing on the backside of like little moguls and little powder piles and stuff. And it's just, it's like, and it's like motoing. It's like, I'm not a motocross rider, but it's like, we would call it motoing, and Rowan Rogers is way into it too. And like, and you're kind of like, you're like bunnying and airing down the mountain versus just laying back and making powder turns that are, I know it sounds funny.
You know what? Okay, you're completely convinced me now. I rode with Jason Bass
love Bass
under Chair 5, and it was kind of a chundry day, and I got to the midpoint, and I thought I must have lost him because I was hauling ass, and it was kind of what you're talking about. But he was so far ahead of me, it was crazy that he had to call me. He's like, "Where the hell are you?" He was already at the bottom waiting at the chair because he rides so fast. He was riding like a Sims Kidwell like knockoff, like something that he traced and somebody had made it. Maybe he made it himself.
Don't doubt Bass, dude.
He's so fast, and he was riding like what you were saying, and I was wicked timid in that. Like I find that stuff really throws me off. Like my legs get killed in like one run, two runs.
That's funny because it might be all the years in squaw.
Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier, I've slowed down in my airs and my lines, and I don't do big cliffs anymore, 15 feet and 20 at the most. I just don't. But I literally feel like I'm better at that kind of riding.
Interesting.
It might be all the years at squaw.
Yeah.
And Mike and I, like, it was funny because Mike was always a filmer, my brother, but he was never a pro snowboarder. But I've literally watched him just take out technique wise so many pro snowboarders at squaw and powder days, because I'm not going to mention names.
Sure,
but and that's not a lot of them. They're not. It's just some of them. They would come to town to film back in the standard days, and they're insane freestyle riders.
Sure,
maybe they're from Scandinavia. Who knows? They're dude. I mean, switch this, that, whatever. They're going to throw down the hugest, most beautiful freestyle tricks you've ever seen. But you get him to the top of KT on a choppy powder day, dude, no chance. Like Mike just comes out and goes and just and I'm like, dude, that was sick, bro. And then here comes whoever, and they're all backseat, pitch, roll, tumble. It's like, it's just it's its own. It's literally like it's almost like it's its own sport. Like you look at climbing, and there's like bouldering and big wall climbing and sport climbing and trad climbing, and snowboarding it's the same way, man. There's like, you got pipe riding, you've got backcountry booters, you've got rails, you've got big mountain riding, and then this is this other little facet. It's riding the chop at a ski resort.
This is the movie you guys got to film now.
Yeah, it's just like literally like I'm at the top of KT. It's west face. It's 2 PM. It's that perfect snow. It's like this ultimate epic light, perfect powder. It's just skied to shit. It's just completely tracked out.
Yeah.
But it's not moguls. It's like, it's not fresh and it's not moguls. It's like this like weird choppy crud. It's like just what ski resorts on a powder day is.
Yeah.
And that technique, that style of riding is literally, to me, it's its own kind of sport. And I just love it because it's one of my favorite things to do, because you're riding a chairlift, so you get a ton of laps in one day.
Totally.
And it's just all about this technique of how you try to ride like Noah. Just like bunny, boom, bam, bam, moto down. You've
got me totally 100% convinced. I got to learn how to do this.
It's epic. It's just like going fast in the crowd. It's its own sport. And there's a fair amount of snowboarders who are good at it. There's Ryland's good at it. All his buddies, anyone that rides a lot of resort riding on POW days, they're all the Whistler boys, Bass, whatever. But there's also a fair amount of climbers. There's a fair amount of boarders that kind of shy away from that, and they don't really get it or do it, or they.
I'm one of them. Yeah. Like I remember seeing, because it is really, really impressive to see it from the chairlift. You're watching somebody that's just crushing this run that's been spent,
mutilated. Yeah,
it's been spent. It's like, but then they're hitting things in it and blasting huge airs into pockets where you're just like, I wish I could do that.
And the skiers and the fat skiers are good at it.
Yeah,
and and it can be pretty high consequence. Like when you get hauling ass and you're bunnying and motoing down a mutilated power run, if you fuck up, if you screw up, it's gonna hurt. Like you can eat it, man, bad. It hurts.
Yeah,
because it's not like totally soft pow. So I know they're gonna laugh at me and blah blah blah.
No, there's people out there that get it.
Yeah, I know there's some people right now going, right on, Dave. I know exactly, dude. I'm gonna go fucking mutilate the pow tomorrow and the chopped up run, and I'm gonna moto like Noah did, and it's just and I mean, maybe when I said that it's untracked snow was too easy, but I think I think a lot of snowboarders can relate in the fact that it is actually quite easy. I mean, if you're on like a perfect steepness run and it's got fresh snow on it and you've got several years of snowboarding under your belt, let's face it, I mean, ripping power turns is pretty easy. It's not that hard.
Well, like I told you that Jason Mack took me to Coleman's, which I don't know technically how hard that is. Like
Black Diamond, it's just whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, like it's not like super gnarly. But to drop in there sight unseen, I didn't even really scope it from the chairlift. Just like you're not blind, but you see that corner, and he was a mountain guide in Alaska.
Yeah,
so
he's badass.
Yeah, he gave me the exact part. He said just like one big banana there, and then you'll see the rock wall on your right side, and everything should be good to go. Yeah. And it was just exactly how he said. Like when he came down it after I watched him, and he really kind of noodled it, but I mean there was a track in it. But then when he got to me, he was like, "You sent that, dude," and I was like, "Yes." But like you're saying, it was super easy because it was completely untracked, and it was just wide open.
Being the first guy down lines is critical. I was really a stickler about that back in the day. Mm-hmm. When I did lines at Squaw, like Coleman's or whatever, any of the lines, if I wasn't the first guy there, I just don't even do it. It's just night and day.
Yeah,
I remember way back we were filming For Fear of a Flat Planet with Dan Donnelly. And we both got in the chute and it was at Verbier. And it was like turns to an ollie over like a 20-foot cliff, land in a pocket, and then ride out. And so like he won the Rochambeau and he got to go first. I'm like, oh man, this thing's gonna have a track and it's gonna be gnarly. And that was, like I said, I hated doing lines because it just threw me off. There was something about having that untracked snow. I could just ride it the way I wanted to ride it. Toe, heel, boom, ollie, just it all. I wasn't like having to plan my line around tracks. So we both weasel down into the entrance to the chute to the point of no return.
Yeah.
Dano goes first. They're filming and he lands in the pocket and the whole thing rips. It's like a 2-foot fracture and the thing rips to ice. Oh. And it's like a pretty, like I said, it's like an area into a pocket. Like you're landing in between rock wall. Yeah. And then you're like pointing it into a bowl with like, more rocks. Oh. And I'm in this chute, like committed.
You can't climb back out.
I can't climb back out. I was like, I thought about it. I thought, I'm like, it could be more dangerous because I'm going to unstrap my board and then I could lose my footing and then it just slide. Jesus, So I had to do the line and land on ice. I had to like fully like
20-footer to just bam.
It was insane. I was like so scared. I'm like, well, this is it. Like I have to do this, and that was that really ingrained in my mind. Like
first track only.
Yeah, like your experience you had today. It's like it's so different when there's a track in it. It's not even.
Yeah, it's not the same place.
It blows your concentration. It blows your flow and. Yeah, if you're going to ride a line, be the first guy or just maybe wait a different day or ride something else.
Or wait until it's totally tracked and then try and bunny it.
Yeah, well, when you did Coleman's today too, because it's kind of preseason, it was probably kind of semi-skinnier than it because it gets way more filled in.
Oh, yeah, probably.
And then what happens later in the year is there's this thing called the Coleman Straight Run, and there's a direct entrance into it where you basically come down this knob. Cool. And you do like a small air, there's pepper, and then you land basically right in the chute that you were riding.
Yeah,
and
sick.
And then the day I did the Hatchett line on the fingers, I actually did the Coleman Straight Run. I went down. I was the first guy on the chair, and it was a really nice snow year. It was pretty filled in, and I pointed it down, and I just did the Coleman Straight Run as a warm up for fun.
Oh my god, and then so rad!
And then I went down. So check it out when you ride, or maybe we'll go ride there on tomorrow.
I hope so. That'd be really fun.
And I'll show you the Coleman Straight Run. Well, I think it's just pure rock right now because there's not enough snow.
It is, for sure it is because it was where we dropped in. There was just to the left. It was just a big rock.
Yeah, that would have been your rider's left as you're coming in.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a cool line. As you do that, then you're perfectly poised to hit the fingers. And then
I feel so lucky that today happened because most times you go to a resort. Say you go to a resort by yourself, you don't know where the hell to go.
Yeah.
Like the first couple of runs for me, I was like, I know I'm blowing it, but I can't. Like I don't know where the cliffs are and all this shit. Like they're just marking cliffs with like a little yellow placard.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, not only the cliffs, but then all the hits and the jibs and the wind lips. And if you take one run on KT with someone who knows where they're going, like say Rylan, and you follow him down, and he's going to take you on a run that he does all the time. you're gonna
stay on that run all day.
Yeah, you're gonna notice there's 5 jumps that you weren't even thinking about hitting.
Right.
You're like, oh, look at that hip right there. I didn't even see that. And look at that. And all of a sudden,
I didn't hit any jumps today.
So you're kind of hitting. Yeah, well, probably not the best conditions for it with the visibility and the flat light. But anyways, you're gonna. It's all about knowing the mountain. And like you said, the cliffs is one thing, and the exposure. And then making the most of your run, not having to traverse. Yeah. And it's
my first traverse, like I went right to the nose, but I just went over like the top, and it was like exposed, kind of icy.
Did you make
crust.
Did you have to unstrap, or did you make the traverse?
I made it. I made the traverse, no problem. But the problem was at the top of each of those little pitches, it was just like ice that I could break through, and then it was slush underneath. And I didn't know what was on either side. Like I was like, oh my God, there's like no tracks over this.
It's all flat light and wind blowing.
Yeah. And like I thought, if I slip, I don't know what the hell I'm slipping into. Yeah. I was like gripped. I was gripped the whole way over. And then once I got guided over, there's like a lower line you can do that's just pow.
There is some sketchy stuff in there though. Like a little bit to the rider's left of the nose is a chute called Big Balls. And there was and then Noah actually almost got killed there one time. If you ride the spine on the left side, rider's left side of the nose, you can go down that spine and you kind of like ride and run on the edge of Big Balls, and then you come back in at the last second onto you're above cliffs, but then you traverse rider's right back into the nose. And he hit some ice in there and slid off and went like as far, I'm trying to remember, he slid off a cliff kind of in a slough. And totally went off a cliff unexpected and like not where he wanted to go, and landed in a pocket of snow like right between rocks, and got like really lucky. Like he basically just got sloughed off cliffs like the wrong way. Oh, damn. And landed in some pow. But the nose is funny, like where you were today, the Colemans. Mike and I were talking about this. It's never pow. The nose is always moguls, ice, or windswept. It can snow 18 feet. Right. And it's just one of those places on the mountain where the snow never collects. Yeah. And then once you get moguls, it doesn't take much to get moguls on it. So basically what happens is real early in the season, it gets opened up and people put some moguls in there, and then the moguls just never go away.
They get a little bit of wind blown in there, and then but every pow day they just get bigger and bigger.
It's just one of those spots that never fills in. But a little local tidbit here for you. Just to the right of the nose, on the rider's right side of the nose and left of Coleman's where you went, is this thing called Hero Chute. And this is a shout out to Noah, because he used to love this run. And he called it Hero Chute because you're just total visibility of the chair. And it's basically rider's right side of the nose, and it's a little bit right of this cliff drop called the Booger. Nice. And it's this perfect little... In the beginning of the season, it's a chute. Then it kind of just turns into like a snow face, kind of a wide open snow face. But Noah would just rip it in classic Noah style, and he loved to do it. He would do it a lot on powder days, and Mike would always follow him. So it'd be like, Mike and Noah, we're going to Hero Chute. I'm like, you guys are going to track it. I'm going to go to the left or whatever. But yeah, look for it next time you go to Squaw. I'll point it out to you. It's a classic. And we're probably the only people that ever call it Hero Chute. But that's a little local.
Yeah, I think that Jason Mack guy pointed it out.
Did he?
He said that he might have called it Hero Chute.
Yeah, he might have. Like I said, this time of year, it's kind of a chute of sorts. It's maybe like a.
I don't think it's filled in yet.
Yeah, it might be like 8 or 10 feet wide right now, and just enough to kind of link like pretty tight turns. And typically on a powder day, you can kind of make a few turns at the top, maybe wiggle through a little tight section, and then kind of let it run at the bottom. And that's the one. If you can be down there early and before the nose, which is never good, that's the one spot where you can actually get some pow. But then what happens is people come traversing out of Coleman's as the day moves on, and then that turns into a big traverse rut.
Oh yeah,
and then
of
you can end up hitting that traverse rut going really fast. Yep. And then that can be a bad scenario there. So it's just one of those things where you got to be like first guy down early in the morning, and it's not the epic tracked powder that I'm always searching for.
So it's an A day, not an A+ day.
There are days when it's good, but yeah,
that's amazing.
So yeah, maybe tomorrow I'm gonna go look for tracked pow all day. That's gonna be my thing.
I don't think you'll have a hard time finding it tomorrow because it's a weekend.
Yeah,
and the forecast has been for good snow for like a week, so everybody's been making their plans, and they're going to be up here.
Well, yeah, and one guarantee too is Squaw opens at at 9.
Yeah.
So if you get there at like 9:15,
yeah,
you're guaranteed KT will be totally tracked. So just,
that's amazing.
You have like a 20-minute window where it's untracked. No, I'll give it an hour. Like
an hour.
Yeah. You typically, I'll say if you get there at 9, right when they open, you're going to get 2 really good, probably top to bottom, pretty much power, like untracked. You might cross a few tracks here
but
and
you
there.
got to pick your line. Yeah. It's not like you just get anything.
Yeah, and then by the 3rd lap, it's already deteriorating. And then by 10, if you stand at the base of KT and you look up at the fingers and the whole mountain, it's going to basically look completely tracked.
That's unreal. Yeah. So today was just a luxury. It was just such a.
It was the wet snow.
Yeah.
It's not the resort's not crowded yet anyway. So even if we had like an A+ day right now, it just wouldn't be that bad of crowds.
Well, it could be an A+ day tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow I'm thinking Sunday because
Sunday.
I think that we're going to get the lower snow levels and the
double dose of like snow,
better snow,
tracked snow.
Yeah, better visibility. I think tomorrow's going to be kind of a transition day.
Yeah,
but probably still fun to ride. But I'm going to call it out right now. I'm going to go B to B+. I'm predicting it. Yeah, I'm going to go A- on Sunday because I don't think we're going to get enough snow to go A+.
Yeah.
But as long as it doesn't freeze on Saturday night and we avoid some dust on crust scenario, and it kind of stays soft through and through. That's another thing too I've learned that I think, any rider will get what I'm saying. It's all about hitting bottom. Like when you go to make a turn, like the worst conditions I've ever ridden in my life. Noah, again, I'm thinking of Noah. Noah was so rad. I love Noah.
Yeah.
We were at Big Sky back in the day, and it was the worst dust on crust conditions I've ever experienced in my life. It must have been 20 below or whatever the hell it was there in Montana. And it snowed like 1.5 feet overnight. It hadn't
Which
snowed.
Sounds like the best.
Yeah, it hadn't snowed for 2 weeks.
Right.
They get 1.5 feet of just 20 below or just the lightest snow on top of the hardest, gnarliest ice base. And dude, it was insane. Like you would blow through that 1.5 feet of snow like it wasn't there at all.
Yeah.
And you're basically riding ice with 1.5 feet of powder that didn't even matter that it was there because it wasn't even soft or slowing you down at all.
Right.
And then you'd hit these like little death cookies and get bucked. And the locals were like, "It's so sick. It never snows 1.5 feet in Montana." And I'm like, kind of thinking to myself, it snows 1.5 feet every day in Tahoe, bro.
Yeah.
This is the worst powder day I've ever had. And they were raving about it. Me and Noah were just like laughing. We're just like, dude, those guys can have Montana, bro.
Yeah.
But back to what I was saying is it's all about hitting bottom. And it's all like, so when I think about those A+ days, if dust and crust is the worst on a snowboard for me for riding that chopped snow.
Absolutely.
But if you can push your edge down and you can lay into your turn and you don't get any resistance and you don't like bang and hit like hard snow or like a lump of snow or wet snow or whatever it is that slows you down, that's when I kind of start going A+. When I feel like I can lay into my turn the hardest I can lay into it and there's no resistance. And then I just come off of that turn into my next turn and then there's no resistance. And then there's just never any resistance on any turns.
Yeah.
And I get in this like the bump skiers used to say, the freestyle guys, stay light, think light. And I've actually taught a lot of my friends. They see me riding the crud. They're like, "Fuck, Dave, you're pretty good at riding crud, bro. Like, hey, what's your technique? How do you do that?" And it's some of them are really good snowboarders, but most of them are like more like my kind of budding snowboarders that are just starting to ride. And I go, "Bro, stay light, think light, don't overpower, don't push into your turn so much. Like it's more like about floating and finding those transitions and not digging in so much. You're not on a groomed run." Railing like Victoria Jalouse. You're not trying to make a race turn.
Right.
And it's another funny thing too. People might laugh at me, but it's like it's almost like doing like little smear turns. And like when I say smear turn, I mean like you're flat based. Your board is flat.
Yeah.
And you're smearing side to side like little J turns versus like a carving turn.
Right.
And because you don't want to think about like if you're on an untracked powder run, you're just going to kind of carve back, left, right. Maybe I'm going to slalom, maybe I'm going to GS, maybe I'm going to super G, maybe I'm going to point it. But you're just kind of like linking these like even turns. Whereas riding that crud is more about like spur of the moment, smear turn, slalom turn, GS, point it, bunny, moto. It's just like, it's just happening so fast. And that's what I just love about it. It's like this like crazy, like, it's just, every run's different and you just never know what to expect. And it's funny, I'll go do one run and I'll be like, dude, I killed that. Like that was the best run ever. I felt so good. And I'll go back to the very next run and I'll do like kind of the same line and I'll just suck. I'll be like, I'll get bucked on my first turn.
Yeah.
Then I get it together for my second turn. My third bunny moto doesn't work out. I'm in the rut. I hit the mogul. I hit the ice spot. I'm like, dude, that was like,
flip over.
Yeah, like it's like all it takes is one little wrong moment.
Yeah.
To kind of like mess you up in that situation.
Throw it off.
But like I said, it's kind of like that. I know I'm kind of talking a lot about the chopped powder, but it seemed like a kind
Dude,
of,
I love it.
It seemed like a funny subject. And
it's like,
but it's like, I know that, you know, maybe people are going to listen to this and they're going to relate on the day when they go ride mutilated POW. It's like, dude, smear turn, bunny, moto, hop, carve, boom. And you just, dude, it just feels so rad when you nail it. And you're like, and you're reading the terrain too. It's not like you're just on this open face. I mean, maybe you're on an open face, but when I'm doing it, I'm kind of looking for contours too. I'm looking for wind rolls and like little undulations in the snow.
Stuff to jump off of. Things to hit.
Yeah, maybe it flows up on a little cat road. Like Homewood had all these. One thing that Homewood has is a lot of rad wall rides. There's wall rides everywhere.
Nice.
And so when the powder days come up, you can really hit a lot of wall hits and you can do like cool butters and slides and you can just do all kinds of kind of fun, like freestyle-y tricks on the wall rides and stuff. So you can kind of link those powder runs into those powder, you know, the choppy powder runs can then kind of flow into like the undulations and the contours. And so I feel like snowboarders do a little bit better job of reading the contours of the mountain and making more use
a better job.
Yeah. Of riding, you know, I was riding with the Burton team yesterday, Danny Davis and all the crew, and Blotto was up at Burton.
Whoa.
Yes. They were up at, was it yesterday or the day before? They were all up at, I got to take some laps with them, and I was watching some of the younger riders. I can't even remember a couple of their names, but it was great. It was like watching them ride, and they're like, "That's how I like to ride." Like sometimes it's a bit much. Like you're almost like, "Dude, slow down, bro." Like you're just going to like you don't need to like hit every little thing, but sometimes you kind of do, and it's like I feel like snowboarders really make that happen. They use every undulation, every little thing, every wall ride. Where skiers are just kind of like parallel turns, down Christie, like you just like, dude, like
that's why if you go heli, and I don't think that this is gonna have been your experience because you probably haven't spent a lot of time at like heli lodges going for a vacation. You know what I mean?
No, so I was working, unfortunately.
Yeah. But when you're at a heli lodge, I was there as a guest of one of the people that worked there, and you go out with the skiers that paid the $15,000 to be there for the 5 days. They're really not very creative in going down the hill. Yeah. They're really looking for powdered eights. Like when you take them to like interesting terrain, they tend to like go in a single track down a bunch of stuff. And you're like, whoa, you're totally wasting this run, you guys. Like the guide brought us here. The tail guide is like, you can go anywhere to the left of the tracks, to the right of the tracks. Like, you don't need to go down the track. Like, that's insane that you're doing that.
Well, sometimes they'll even make you, right? They want you to like make one, like you go down, and then I have to go down 1 foot of your track, and do the exact tracks because we're like trying to save the powder.
That's where I saw these guys who had been riding all week, and it's the last day, and they brought us to this sunny open, just like an open bowl, like the most boring blue run that you've ever seen. And these guys are making powder eights, and they get to the bottom, and they're like, "Why did you save this till the last day? Like, this is the best run of the trip." Like, you could make an entire heli operation of just going to those big, wide open, boring, you know, as opposed to going to the interesting stuff that you're talking about, like where I don't want to ride straight down a hill ever, not ever. No. Like I want to hit features and enjoy the run.
That's where it's at, man. That's where you see the creativity in snowboarding, and a lot of skiers do it too, and especially a lot of the younger skiers. And you'll especially now with the fatter skis, they're kind of getting on that tip.
Totally.
This totally reminds me of a super funny story. Way back in the day at Revelstoke, we're going there for a fall line film shoot.
Sick.
Super classic crew: Farmer, Parada, Hetzel, Maddie Goodwin, Goodwill.
Oh, wow.
myself, Tom Burt, and my brother was filming, and Sean Sullivan were shooting stills. And it was so we revel stoke, and we're heli skiing, and we go up with the first run, and they're being all super proper with their heli etiquette technique and stuff. So okay, here's the bowl, and I want you guys all to kind of like stay close to each other, and like try not to chew up the powder and stuff. So like I can't remember who went first, but we just completely did the exact like they were pissed. Like, dude, Farmer goes this way, Parada goes that way. Like, I mean, we followed their protocol of going at the right time. But like literally, we just zigzag mutilated, and between the 8 of us, we just completely annihilated. We annihilated this whole run. Yeah, like we used every feature and just crisscrossed, and like no one's tracks matched. No one looked the same. Right. Goodwill went over here and went off a cliff, and Tom Bird did that, and it was like the epitome of the exact. Like it made them mad. It was funny. Because they wanted like the Wigglies, like okay, tight formation, Flying Tigers, Blue Angels.
He's looking at the run, going, okay, we got 10 runs down here. As long as everyone keeps their tracks nice and tight.
That didn't happen. That did not happen.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was such a classic crew. I mean, what a bunch of crazy guys. And
that's an all-time crew and an all-time way to ride the mountain. Like that's what it comes down to, is like creativity in snowboarding. It's the core of it. It's the authentic core of snowboarding, is looking down the mountain in a way that like that's going to be fun. Then I'm going to hit that, and then this. Like it's definitely not. Hey, listen, honestly, if you're a listener out there and you like making powder eights, it's fun. I could see it. It's cool. I get it, but it's just not snowboarding in the way that all the movies showed us. All the creative riders showed us this cool way of riding, like exciting terrain, not
agreed.
Like boring stuff. And you know what? That's maybe where I missed out the first time that I watched the films where you were doing Mendenhall Towers. I'm like, that's just like, I mean, technically it's insane. Going back and watching it, it's like, I'm gripped just watching, like, oh my God, can you even ride something that steep? It's insane. But it's at the end of the day, it's your turns look so nice and perfect that it's like, I want to see something like challenging or interesting, you know what I mean? So like we would maybe, and I've said it a bunch on the show, and we didn't do it all the time, but once you've watched the movie 4 or 5 times, you're fast forwarding those power turn runs because you're just going, I just want to see, how did Jamie Lynn do that? Like it came off his toes. Oh, is he switching that? Is that, you know what I mean? Like you wanted the technical freestyle side of things, as opposed to like, we get it, you can turn, you got a helicopter, it dropped you at the perfect place at the perfect time, and you turned down that thing, whatever, you know what I mean? If I was there, I could have done it. And now, having seen, say, TB in real life, Tom Burt does not, I said it to Sedway too, he doesn't come across on the screen in a way that you can understand how incredibly talented he is on a snowboard. He just looks like it looks like he did something up there, and now he's just coming down, like he's looking at the camera like, yeah, that was fun up top, but he's like so in control and so relaxed on the way that it doesn't look like it's challenging him.
You almost have to, someone like Tom, you have to kind of ride with him. It's again back to the the technique and the A+ days and the crud, and it's just, it comes down to, like you said, it is just turns, right? It is at the end of the day, it is just turns, and it's not doing some technical trick, or it's the furthest thing from that. But the style and the technique that goes into that is way beyond what you can imagine if you're just getting bored as a viewer watching someone just making powder turns, because that's part of it, right? But there's a lot more that goes into it, and especially when you come into riding a technical line or a dangerous line.
Go and get on one of those lines. Like that's the thing for me. As soon as I got to Mount Baker, I was like, oh, flying the wall that's not a run.
Yeah, and you can kill yourself, and there's rocks everywhere.
It's straight down.
Yeah, you have to make, and so your turns have to be totally perfectly planned, and you have to hopefully nail it, and you flow into the line and ride it perfect, and hopefully. But it's the consequences are high on gnarly lines like that. But that's kind of a funny point that you made about the breakdown of the powder, and I get it, and it's funny because Jeff McKittrick, my skier friend, he used to do the same thing with the jib sections. He hated the jibbing, but he loved the big mountain, because he was a big mountain skier. Yeah. She's like, Dave, every time the jib sections come on, that's when I know I need to go take a piss. So, so he'd watch like my section and Tom Burt's section. And then when like whoever, freestyle section came on, he was just over it.
He's like, forget it.
Dude, that stuff's so lame. Little rails and little small airs. And it's just, who cares?
That was a theme early on in the show. This year I went back and listened to Chuck Barfoot, the interview that I did with him. And he was saying, he was probably the original guy to say that's not snowboarding. Like when someone says like jibbing's not snowboarding,
like
rails or 1 foot stuff, that's not snowboarding. He was like, anything that's not surfing down the mountain, any of that freestyle stuff where you jump in the air, where you're flipping around backwards, that's not snowboarding to me. I was like, that's hilarious. It's such a narrow view that it's all you want to do is surf.
Well, and you summed it up, narrow view. It's I feel I've seen a lot of people and heard a lot of people with those similar views.
Sure.
And I mean, just call me open-minded, call me just more of that kind of casual guy. But I've always just had this view towards life, just with everything, with surfing and snowboarding. I like everything. I suck at rails. I've done some rails. You're not going to see me doing a rail in a movie, but I tried some rails back in the day with Rippy to see if I can do them at Mount Hood, and I did them. I did some board slide, 180 out. I did some rails instead. It wasn't me. I just wanted to see if I could do it. But I always, even though it was the furthest thing from what I liked to do on a snowboard, I loved the talent. I appreciated the talent, and I always, when I watched movies, me personally as a viewer and a snowboarder, I liked watching Jamie Lynn. I liked watching the rails. I liked watching Noah. I liked the jibbing. I liked the big mountain.
Have you seen any of this stuff that's coming out now, the X Games reel edits?
No.
Oh my God. Just Google it after this. And like the stuff that they're doing is so creative and like super styly and like
on rails.
Yeah. But it's not even just rails. It's like they go to old towns and like ride features that are, you wouldn't believe it. It's just insane.
Like building jibbing and like
buildings
urban jibbing.
It's incredible.
Again, that stuff too. Like I
could never do it, but like watching it, I can get excited about it. And now I think like what you're saying, there's 2 points I want to make. Number one, when I was a kid, all I cared about was getting in the air. And so that was a narrow-minded view. And now I appreciate it a lot more. And number two, I am now still so grateful for the fact that the standard movies showed a very broad swath of what was going on in snowboarding, as opposed to getting just street jibs or like whatever the flavor of the year was for whoever was doing whatever, just a whole movie of just big air jumps or whatever. When you would sit down and watch that, like a TV movie for the first, for the premiere, our first premieres were just in the shop. The movie would come in from VMX, we'd put it in the VCR, and 50 people would just sit and watch the whole movie all the way through. It really did give you that feeling of snowboarding is a broad spectrum sport with a lot of rad shit in it.
Yeah, I mean, why not? That was kind of our business plan to begin with, was Mike and I will concentrate on the extreme side of it. Big mountain riding and Dogger will do the jibbing and freestyle, and we'll combine it. And just, I don't know, like, why not watch it all and appreciate it for what it is? And if you've got the talent to ride it all, if you're a Kevin Jones, if you're a John's Action,
Noah. Almost no one better than Noah.
Yeah, the list goes on. Torstein. I mean, all these, Travis Rice. There's so many guys that can ride everything, and women. Yeah. Like, if you can rip pipe and you can rip big mountain and you can rip rails and you can do it. Like, it's like, that's, to me, that's the ultimate rider. And that's always been the ultimate rider, is someone that can put it together all. But at the same time, I have mad respect for just the rail guy and just Jeremy, who can barely do a 360 to save his life, Jones, but he's like one of the best big mountain riders ever.
Hell yeah.
But like, I just like it all. I'm kind of an easygoing guy. I got a smile on my face. I'm just ripping pow, having fun. And I just kind of like, I don't get super bitter or critical about people's riding, or, I just like to enjoy. If you're having a good time, I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do. I'm not going to tell you how to ride or what to ride. If you're having fun, do it, and that's, I don't know. But I get it. Like, there's always there's the more hypercritical people out there, but that's, a lot of that comes with age too, right? Like, you kind of talked about when you were younger, that's how you saw it. Now you've kind of grown.
Totally. 100%.
And that's a kind of a metaphor for life. Like, you're just so full of like testosterone and piss and vinegar and I'm the shit when you're young.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're full of all these opinions. And then you get like maybe pro snowboarding thrown in your face, and you think, I'm better than that guy. I could do that. And, but here I am stuck. I'm stuck swinging chairs and Boreal and
exactly.
So
dude.
you're like, why does that guy get it and I don't? And you got resentment and stuff. But
totally. Yeah. I remember feeling it about big boards. It's like, if I rode a 175, I could stick every big cliff and blah, blah, blah. But really, it's not. As you go and you try that, I rode like a Rad Air 202 tanker or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. It's a completely different style of riding. It's faster. It makes that chunder you're talking about like way more fun. Way more fun if you have a nice big nose on a like just a giant board. Yeah. But it makes small mountain stuff no fun. Like you can't go to Grouse Mountain with a 202. It's like 2 turns and you're at the bottom of the hill, and there's people you got to watch out for and stuff, and you're going too fast. And my mind opened up a lot as I got older and realized
that happens.
The best people in snowboarding definitely were not bitter. They were like super stoked to go snowboarding, and having fun outside, building a quarter pipe outside of the hotel they were staying in and just having a session with their buddies. Mm-hmm. That was fun for them. And so was the Alaska Heli Day, and those are the people that I look up to still now, like a guy like yourself that, reads the weather, knows where the best site is for squall weather. And you've got your A+ day, you got it. Like, okay, well, it's maybe it'll surprise me. You're going for a B day and you get there and it's a B+ or an A, like, and you're just happy riding when you're riding. Like that's super sick. You mentioned at the beginning of the episode that it was, that there's a lot of people that get out of it. Like I'm thinking of a guy like Keith Wallace, who was such a shredder so early on, but it just became really difficult for him to go to a resort and pay, right? And it was crowded all of a sudden, and then there's people building jumps, and everybody's kind of all over the place, and it's 50-50 snowboarders and skiers, and he's looking going like, oh, there's a bunch of beginner snowboarders. Because there was a time where if you were a snowboarder on a mountain, there's a good chance that you were, intermediate or above. There wasn't a lot of beginner snowboarders. Yeah. And I think there's a handful of people, and that's been my technique, is to just stay on till the bitter end.
You may as well.
And everybody kind of falls off, and then I'm up riding, that Coleman chute on a day when there's not that many people up there.
Yeah, I mean, you can't let the little things get to you. Like with whatever happened with Keith, or I just feel like there's a lot of pro snowboarders, ex-pro snowboarders that let weird vibes or things that happen in the industry jade their view of snowboarding. But if you break it down, when they first started, they must have started for a reason because they loved it. Right. And then the fame and the money kind of messed them up, and then they weren't able to kind of just overcome that and go back to just being a civilian snowboarder again.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of the same thing with like the bitter lift op. That's like, I'm as good as those guys. And there's okay, I get it. There's 500 insane snowboarders in the world, or whatever that number is, but there's really only room for 100 of them to be pros. Because there's just, they can't, the companies can't sponsor everybody. They wouldn't have enough money. So there's probably a really good amount of like riders out there that will never be sponsored, never be in a movie, never be in a mag, no one will ever know their name, that are insane riders, incredible riders.
Oh, absolutely. Every resort has those guys.
Yeah, but they're insane. But literally, if you're a Travis Rice, if you're a Danny Davis, if you're like an A++ pro, that's going to speak for itself.
There's a reason.
There's guys like that, Kevin Jones. They're going to be a pro snowboarder no matter what. Yeah. They're going to make it because they're the best of the best. Yeah. The guy, the lift ops, they might be as good as some of the B-list pros.
Totally.
But that's, like I said, the true talent is always going to speak for itself, and that'll always shine. And there's also, of course, with sponsorship comes image and marketability and all that stuff too. So there's way more that is involved with just being a good snowboarder. You have to be a good ambassador to the sport. You have to be maybe it's looks, maybe it's your hair. I don't know. It's something, but you have to bring something to the table to the sponsors, to the product manufacturers, that it's going to be marketable and worthy to them. And it's a work ethic too, like especially nowadays with all the social media and the
crazy.
I mean, you sign a contract, you got to abide by that contract. It's a job.
Yeah.
It's not. You have responsibilities, and you have to be, like I said, an ambassador and a good rider and all these things. And
Did you guys ever have like an unknown rider that just kind of tagged along with you that eventually ended up being like, that guy's insane? Was it like Tucker Franson or some guy that just like...
Tucker's a great rider. He was, I remember riding with him back in the day. He was really good. But
yeah.
I'd have to dig deep into the archives and my memories.
Yeah, anybody that just like kind of hung around, like knew who you guys were, and just was like, hey, you guys, and just followed around.
All of a sudden, they were ripping.
Yeah.
I'll have to think on that.
Yeah, think on that. Going through the history of snowboarding with people over the last 5 years with this podcast, I was really not up to speed on. I had no idea what had happened before, or even during when I was doing it. And it's so great to like link stories together, and definitely hearing from people that lived in Tahoe, like what was going on down here was like a fishbowl, but also like it was just being broadcast out to the entire snowboarding world, as like, especially in the days when you guys when you were a pro rider, and when like those avalanche days and the sims, all the sim stuff, like Tahoe was the place.
Yeah, it was the epicenter for sure.
100%.
I mean, there was stuff going on in Canada and Europe. And
like Ken Achenbach and all his guys.
Evan Feen and
Evan, yeah.
But there was the Tahoe was like whatever. It was the North Shore of snowboarding. It was kind of. Maybe because it was California, and maybe it was the population. There was more people living here.
People moved here though to do it.
Yeah, well, it is a great place to. We got the sun. It's a great place to ride. I mean, we got the sun, we got the POW, we got a lot of the elements. You get up into the Pacific Northwest, and it's like the weather's crappier.
Yeah, totally.
You go to Southern California, it doesn't snow enough, and then you go interior, like you start going Snowbird, Jackson, and you got high Ivy conditions. So this was kind of like the playground where you could kind of do it all and be in a safer environment. Avalanche wise was certainly safer. So that probably had a little bit to do with it.
And the crews were based down here, like you and Mac Dog, like I was surprised to find out when Shannon and Dave were talking about it. I don't know if we talked about it on mic. In fact, I'm sure we didn't. That Oceanside or wherever the heck the Transworld offices were and Snowboarder, like people would move close to there so they could go through with the photo editors and pick their photos and be like pushing their photos, like to get that was a part of being a professional snowboarder, was being tight with the magazines and getting in there and like, yeah, that one's good, like trying to do that image, like trying to make it.
Yeah, that was definitely part of the game for sure.
That's insane.
Is knowing all those guys, and I think that obviously the guys at the magazines too, all the editors, they knew too. It was like a symbiotic kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
they knew who was sponsored and who was giving money to the magazines as far as ad dollars, and they kind of had an obligation in a way to like, we kind of need to put these guys in the editorial stuff.
Oh, they would say it. They would say it outright to a smaller company like Ice Age. They'd say, look, buy the ads, shoot with our photographers, look at the list of names at the front of the thing, and bring those guys to shoot your ads, and then the editorial just will follow.
Yeah, but because the staff photographers, it doesn't cost them anything. Like those guys were all on staff photographers, so they were getting paid to go shoot. They go out and shoot, but they wouldn't have to buy the photos because they were already on salary.
Right.
So it was a lot harder as a freelance photographer to sell the stuff.
Totally.
But I think it works the same in all the surfing and all the sports. Is they know who the pros are and who needs the promotions, and there's a reason they're putting those people in the editorials.
Yeah.
Versus the bitter lift op at Boreal.
Oh yeah. Totally. Yeah, there was
me in there. I can do that shit too.
It's like, all right, well then go out and find a photographer and make sure you're on some good gear that is worth, because the magazines aren't gonna print an editorial of someone on a 4-year-old board or
Well, not if you can see the base graphics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you might get a POW shot. You might get a real epic shot from far away where they can't tell the board in there, but I'm sure a lot of guys' claim to fame is something like that,
That's funny.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up, man.
Okay, cool.
It's been an absolute pleasure. This day's been one of the best days of my life. Thank you very much. I wanted to talk about the arrowheads and stuff because that shit is really interesting to me, but we'll have to table it for another episode, bro.
Yeah, and then so how long are you in town for?
I'm here until Tuesday or something.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll get I think Sunday, Monday, I've promised. So
yeah,
so let's go shred.
B plus, did you say?
I'm going B tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm going A- on Sunday.
Wow.
And then possible A on Monday due to visibility if we get some light snow. And then I'll show you that technique, the bump.
Thank you so much, Dave. That was epic.
Cool.
FNRad shoutouts this week to the man himself, Dave Hatchett, for inviting me into his home, where he's got collections of arrowheads and birds and cats and heavy metal nostalgia like you've never seen. Avalanche snowboards you couldn't even believe, man. And thanks for hooking me up with passes at Squaw. That was awesome. And FNRad shout out to Jason Mack, the Alaska Heli guide and ski patroller at Squaw, who showed me around KT22. Be sure to come back next week for another episode of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast, presented by Vans and brought to you by SIA Productions.